The galaxy had forgotten what humans really were. 300 years had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Coalition. 300 years of peace, trade, and cooperation. The younger species looked at humans and saw merchants, scientists, and diplomats. They saw a people who smiled easily and built beautiful things. They saw kindness. They had forgotten the old stories. They had forgotten why their ancestors locked their doors when Terran ships passed overhead. They had forgotten the terror. Park Do-hyun sat alone in his office on the military station orbiting Mars. He was 43 years old, with gray streaks in his black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. On his desk sat a small metal coin. It showed a ghost passing through a wall. Below it were the words Ghost Division in Korean script. He had not looked at that coin in 5 years. He had hoped he would never need to look at it again. His communicator beeped. A message from Earth Command marked with the highest security clearance. He read it twice. Then he read it a third time because he could not believe what he was seeing. The Valari Consortium had attacked 3 human colony worlds in the Outer Rim. The bombardment had lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 4.2 million humans were dead. Another 800,000 had been taken as prisoners. The Valari were selling them as slaves. Do-hyun closed his eyes. He thought of the families, the children, the people who had done nothing wrong except live on the edge of human space. His communicator beeped again. This time it was a video call. He answered it. The face of Admiral Kwan appeared on his screen. She was an old woman now, but her eyes were still sharp. She had been his commander 20 years ago, during the border conflicts that nobody talked about anymore. "You've seen the reports," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Admiral. The Coalition refuses to help. They say it's an internal matter between member species." Her voice was cold with anger. "They've forgotten what we are, Do-hyun. They think we're soft now. What are my orders?" The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke the words that Do-hyun had been waiting to hear for 3 centuries of human history. "Ghost Division is activated. You have full authority. Remind them." The call ended. Do-hyun picked up the coin and held it tight in his hand. Then he began making calls. Kim Yuna was the first to answer. She was 35, small and quiet, with the patience of a stone. She could lie perfectly still for 3 days waiting for a target. She had been working as a wildlife researcher on Europa, studying ice creatures. She answered on the second ring. "I saw the news," she said. "When do we leave?" Lee Tae-woo was next. He was a big man who loved classical music and very large explosions. He had been teaching demolition techniques at the academy. He didn't even let Do-hyun finish speaking. "I'm already packing," he said. One by one, they answered. Choi Yoonji, who could break into any system ever built. Bai Jinho, the medic who carried more guns than bandages. Yoon Soo-jin, the sniper who rarely spoke but never missed. Han Jun-soo, who fought like a demon in close quarters. And the others, 12 in total. 12 soldiers who had hoped they would never fight again. They gathered on the station within 24 hours. Do-hyun looked at their faces. Some were scared. Some were angry. All of them were ready. "You know what happened," he said. "You know what we're being asked to do. This isn't a war. This is a message. The galaxy has forgotten why they feared us. We're going to remind them." He pulled up a hologram of the Valari Consortium's territory. 12 worlds, hundreds of billions of aliens, a fleet of 10,000 warships. "They expect us to send a fleet," Do-hyun continued. "They expect orbital strikes and ground invasions. They're ready for that. They're not ready for us." Young Shin Mirai raised her hand. She was only 19, a genius with communications and electronic warfare. She had never seen real combat. "Sir," she said, "how do 12 people fight an entire consortium?" Do-hyun smiled. It was not a warm smile. We don't fight them, Private. We break them. We make them so afraid that they can't sleep. We make them jump at shadows. We take everything they think is safe and prove that it isn't. And when they're terrified and exhausted and desperate, we take our people back. Far across the galaxy, a Valari ambassador sat in a meeting with a human diplomat. The ambassador was laughing. "Your species bleeds like any other," he said. "We've studied you. You're nothing special. You have no claws, no armor, no venom. What can you possibly do to us?" The human diplomat said nothing. He reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. A small metal coin showing a ghost passing through a wall. The ambassador looked at it with confusion. "What is this?" "A promise," the diplomat said, and then he walked out. The ambassador laughed again and threw the coin in the trash. He would remember that moment later when the screaming started. He would remember it for the rest of his very short life. On a small stealth ship heading toward Valari space, 12 humans checked their weapons and said their prayers. They were not an army. They were not a fleet. They were something far worse. They were Deathworlders, and they were coming home to collect what was theirs. The galaxy had forgotten its terror. It was about to remember. The Valari expected a fleet. They got a whisper. Thamar 4 was one of the most protected worlds in the consortium. 200 defense platforms floated in orbit. 50,000 soldiers guarded the surface. Sensors covered every inch of space for 1,000,000 kilometers in all directions. None of it mattered. Ghost Division dropped from the edge of the atmosphere at 3 in the morning, local time. They fell through a gap in the sensor net that shouldn't have existed. Kim Yuna had found it after studying their systems for 48 hours straight. A tiny blind spot, lasting only 6 seconds every rotation. 6 seconds was enough. They hit the ground in perfect silence, their black suits absorbing all light and sound. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the wilderness outside the capital city. The Valari had no idea they were there. For the first day, Ghost Division watched. They studied patrol patterns. They mapped security systems. They learned the names of commanders and memorized their faces. Choi Eunji slipped into the planetary network like a fish into water, copying everything without leaving a trace. On the second day, they started playing games. General Veth was the commander of Thamar 4's ground forces. He woke up that morning to find his coffee already poured and sitting on his desk. He had not ordered coffee. His office had been locked all night. Security footage showed nothing. He told himself it was a glitch in the service system. That night, Colonel Kress found a human coin on his pillow, just sitting there in his private quarters, behind 3 locked doors and 2 armed guards. The coin showed a ghost. He screamed for security, but when they arrived, the coin was gone. By the 3rd day, the whispers had started spreading. Strange things were happening all over the military installations. Food went missing. Weapons appeared in wrong lockers. Personal photographs were moved to different rooms. Officers found notes in their own handwriting that they didn't remember writing. Nothing was taken. Nothing was destroyed. But the message was clear. We can reach you anywhere. Captain Park Do-yoon watched the chaos from a rooftop 2 kilometers away. He could see Valari soldiers running in every direction, searching for enemies that had already left. He felt no joy in their fear, only cold purpose. "Status report," he said quietly into his communicator. "I'm inside their command center," Choi Eunji replied. She was hiding in a ventilation shaft directly above the main operations room. She had been there for 8 hours. "I have access to everything. Defense grid, communications, troop movements. They haven't noticed." "Yuna?" "Watching the prison camp," Kim Yuna answered. She was buried in mud, a kilometer from where they kept human slaves. She had been motionless for 2 days, eating nothing, barely breathing. "They have approximately 300 of our people here. Guards change every 6 hours. Security is tight, but predictable." "Tae Woo?" All charges placed, Lee Tae-woo reported. He had spent the last 48 hours planting explosives on every power relay and communication tower on the continent, not to destroy them, just to have the option. Say the word and this whole planet goes dark. On the fourth day, Park gave the word. At exactly midnight, every defense installation on Thamar 4 lost power simultaneously. The orbital platforms went blind. The weapons went silent. Communications died. For exactly 1 hour, the entire planet was helpless. And in that hour, nothing happened. That was the point. When the power came back, the Valari commanders found a message on every screen on the planet. It was written in their own language, in simple words that anyone could understand. You have taken what is ours. We have come to take it back. You may surrender now. You will not receive this offer again. It was signed with the image of a ghost. The High Command laughed nervously and called it a bluff. They doubled patrols. They tripled security. They brought in 200,000 more soldiers from other worlds. General Veth gave a speech to calm his troops. They are only humans, he said. They are soft creatures from a small planet. They cannot hurt us. They are trying to scare us, but we will not be scared. That night, General Veth disappeared from his bed. His guards saw nothing. His locks were not broken. He was simply gone. They found him 3 days later, alive but broken, wandering in the wilderness 50 kilometers away. He would not say what had happened to him. He would never say. He resigned his command and never spoke in public again. On the 5th day, the hunting began. It started with officers. They vanished one by one, plucked from their posts like fruit from a tree. Sometimes bodies were found. Sometimes they weren't. The Valari soldiers started sleeping in groups. They started jumping at every sound. Private Shin Mirai sat at her portable terminal, monitoring all communications on the planet. She was young, and this was her first real mission, but her hands were steady. They're breaking, she reported. Lower ranks are refusing orders. 3 units have deserted. They're saying the planet is haunted. Lee Tae-woo laughed from his position on a hill overlooking the main base. His rifle was warm from use. Haunted, he repeated. I like that. Park Do-yeon did not laugh. He watched the sun set over a world that was learning to fear the dark. Tomorrow they would free the prisoners. Tomorrow there would be real fighting. But tonight, let them be afraid. Let them understand what they had awakened when they touched his people. The Valari had studied humans. They knew about human biology, human technology, human society. But they had missed the most important thing. Humans were not just people from a planet. They were survivors of a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They were the children of earthquakes and plagues and predators. They had walked into the darkness since before they had fire, and they had always walked back out. The Valari were about to learn what that really meant. The Coalition Council watched the footage from Thamar 4 in complete silence. On the giant screen, a single human soldier moved through a corridor filled with Valari guards. She was small, barely visible in the dark. The guards had night vision. They had motion sensors. They had weapons that could cut through steel. They never saw her coming. One by one, they fell. Silent and quick. By the time the last guard hit the ground, Kim Yuna had already disappeared into the shadows. The whole thing took 14 seconds. Ambassador Oh Sun-hee stood before the council with her hands clasped behind her back. She had been a soldier herself once. She knew exactly what she was showing them. This is from last night, she said. 1 operator, 14 enemy combatants. No shots fired, no alarms triggered. A Vithani delegate raised his hand. How is this possible? Our records show humans require light to see. They are not built for stealth. Your records are 300 years out of date, Oh Sun-hee replied. We've had time to improve. The truth was simpler than that. Humans had always been able to do this. They had been hunting in the dark for 100,000 years. They had just chosen not to show it. Across the galaxy, Admiral Kress of the Vithani watched the same footage on his personal screen. He was one of the few aliens who remembered the old wars. He had fought alongside humans once, in the border conflicts that the Coalition preferred to forget. He remembered what they could do. His communicator buzzed. It was a call from the Valari High Command, desperate for advice. "How do we stop them?" the Valari commander demanded. His face was pale with fear. "We have millions of soldiers. They have 12. How are we losing?" Kress sighed. "You're not fighting soldiers, you're fighting predators." "What do you mean?" "Humans evolved on a death world, Category 9. Do you know what that means?" Kress pulled up Earth's file on his screen. "Their gravity is crushing. Their atmosphere is full of reactive oxygen. Their world has earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, and fires. It's covered with predators, parasites, and poisons. So they're tough. We can handle tough." "You don't understand." Kress leaned forward. "Every other species evolved to avoid danger. Humans evolved to chase it. They're persistent predators. They don't ambush their prey. They follow it. For hours, for days, until it collapses from exhaustion. They don't need to be faster or stronger. They just need to never stop." The Valari commander's face went white. "That's what's happening to your soldiers right now," Kress continued. "The humans aren't trying to kill them all. They're exhausting them. Your troops can't sleep because they're afraid. They can't eat because they don't trust their food. They're jumping at shadows and shooting at nothing. And the humans just keep coming, night after night, never resting, never stopping. What do we do?" Kress closed his eyes. "Surrender. Give back their people, and pray they show mercy." The commander ended the call without responding. He would not surrender. His pride wouldn't allow it. 3 days later, he was found dead in his own bunker. The door was still locked from the inside. On Thamar 4, Ghost Division moved to the next phase of their mission. The prison camp held 340 human slaves. They were being kept in underground cells, waiting to be shipped off-world and sold. Kim Yuna had spent 4 days buried in mud outside the camp. She had not moved. She had not eaten. She had watched every guard rotation, every security sweep, every shift change. She knew the camp better than the people who ran it. "I have a path," she reported. 17 guards between us and the prisoners. 2 automated turrets. 1 patrol that passes every 12 minutes. "How long do we have?" Park Do-yoon asked. "Window opens in 6 hours. We'll have 4 minutes before they notice anything." 4 minutes to free 300 people. It sounded impossible. But Ghost Division had done impossible things before. The assault began at 0300 local time. Choi Eun-ji killed the lights. Lee Tae-woo took out the turrets with 2 precise shots. The rest of the team moved like shadows through the darkness. Lieutenant Choi Eun-ji was halfway to the cell blocks when a Valari guard stumbled into her path. He raised his weapon. She was faster, but not fast enough to avoid the plasma bolt that burned through her shoulder. She killed him with her left hand, her right arm hanging useless at her side. Then she kept moving. Blood soaked through her uniform. She didn't stop. Bae Jinho found her 2 minutes later, already working on the cell locks. "You're hit," he said. "I noticed." She didn't look at him. Her fingers kept moving across the keypad. "Let me treat it." After. The cells opened. 340 humans stumbled out into the darkness. They were thin and scared and confused. Some of them were crying. Park Do-yoon stepped forward. "You're safe now," he said in Korean. "We're taking you home." An old woman grabbed his arm. "How?" she whispered. "How did you find us?" "We never stopped looking." They moved out in groups, guided through the darkness by operators who could see without light. Valari soldiers ran past them, searching for enemies that had already gone. The humans were invisible, ghosts in the night. By sunrise, they were 20 kilometers away, hidden in caves that the Valari didn't know existed. 340 people, rescued without a single civilian casualty. Choi Aonji finally let Bai Jinho treat her wound. The plasma had burned deep, but she would keep the arm. "You should have stopped," Jinho said as he worked. "The mission wasn't done." He shook his head. "You humans are crazy." She looked at him with tired eyes. "We're all human here, Jinho." "Yeah." He smiled sadly. "I know." The galaxy was watching now. The footage from Thamar 4 spread across 1,000 worlds. Species that had forgotten humans began to remember. Species that had never met humans began to fear. And somewhere in the darkness, Ghost Division was already planning their next move. The rescued 340 were just the beginning. There were still hundreds of thousands of humans in captivity. They would find them all, however long it took, however far they had to go, because that's what Deathworlders did. They never stopped. The Valari Consortium was falling apart. 3 of the 12 member species had already withdrawn, refusing to continue a war they couldn't win. The others argued endlessly about what to do. Some wanted to negotiate, some wanted to escalate. None of them could agree. Consortium leader Velith sat in his palace on his homeworld, surrounded by his personal fleet, and told himself he was safe. He had ordered the attack on the human colonies. He had authorized the slave trade. If the humans caught him, he would die. But they wouldn't catch him. He had 10,000 warships in orbit. He had 50 million soldiers on the ground. His palace was a fortress within a fortress. No one could touch him here. He was wrong. Ghost Division had been tracking him for 2 weeks. They knew where he slept, what he ate, who he talked to. They knew the patrol schedules of his guards and the blind spots in his sensors. They knew everything. "The main holding facility is 3 kilometers from the palace," Kim Yuna reported. 600,000 humans. They're being processed for transport to slave markets across the sector. Park Do-hyun looked at the tactical display. The facility was massive, heavily guarded, surrounded by an army. His team had 9 operational members. Choi Eunji's arm was still healing. The odds were beyond impossible. "Command wants us to wait for reinforcements," he said. "How long?" Lee Tae-woo asked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Tae-woo's voice was flat. "Do you know how many people they sell every day? How many die in those cells?" Do-hyun knew. He had seen the reports. 50 to 100 people every single day. Dead from abuse, from neglect, from despair. "We're not waiting," he said. No one argued. They had all known what his answer would be. The assault began at midnight. They called it the Long Night, and it would become legend. Ghost Division hit the outer perimeter like a storm. Lee Tae-woo's explosions lit up the sky, creating chaos and confusion. While the Valari scrambled to respond, the rest of the team slipped through the gaps in their defense. They moved fast and hard, nothing like the slow terror of Thamar 4. There was no time for games now, only speed and violence. Private Han Junsu was the first through the main gate. He was a small man, quiet and gentle in normal life. But when he fought, he became something else. Something that moved too fast to see and hit too hard to survive. He cleared the first corridor in under a minute. 12 guards fell before any of them could fire a shot. Behind him, the rest of the team poured through. Yoon Soo-jin found a sniper position on top of a guard tower and began her work. Her rifle spoke again and again, each shot finding its mark. By morning, she would have over 200 kills. They reached the first cell block within an hour. The locks were electronic, designed to be unbreakable. Shin Mireille broke them in 30 seconds. The doors opened. Hundreds of humans stumbled out, blinking in the dim light. They were thin and wounded and broken, but they were alive. "Move to the extraction point," Park ordered. "Stay together. We'll protect you." The Velari counterattack came hard and fast. Thousands of soldiers poured in from every direction, supported by tanks and aircraft. Ghost Division was surrounded. They kept fighting. Han Junsu got separated during a tunnel collapse. He found himself alone, deep in enemy territory, with only his knife and 2 pistols. Any sane person would have hidden, would have waited for rescue. Junsu was not sane. He was human. For 6 hours, he fought his way back to his team. He moved through the darkness like a predator, taking down enemies one by one. When he ran out of ammunition, he used his knife. When he lost his knife, he used his hands. He found 2 wounded civilians along the way. He carried them both. When he finally reached the extraction point, he was covered in blood, most of it not his own. He was carrying 4 captured enemy weapons. His teammates stared at him in disbelief. "What?" he said. "I kept moving forward." The fighting lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of constant combat against an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000,000 to 1. Ghost Division took wounds. They ran low on ammunition. They improvised with captured weapons and desperate tactics. They did not stop. Corporal Bei Jinho fell during the 12th hour, providing covering fire so a group of civilians could escape. A plasma bolt caught him in the chest. He died with his weapon still firing, still fighting, still protecting the people he had sworn to save. Private Shin Mirai fell during the 15th hour. A door had jammed, trapping 50 civilians in a burning building. The explosive charge had malfunctioned. It wouldn't trigger remotely. She triggered it manually. She was 19 years old. By the time the sun rose, the facility was in human hands. 580,000 people were free. The others had not survived their captivity. Park Do-yun stood in the central courtyard, surrounded by the people they had saved. He was exhausted. He couldn't remember the last time he had slept. Everything hurt. A small girl tugged at his uniform. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She looked up at him with wide, wondering eyes. "Are you angels?" she asked. Park looked at his team. 9 survivors out of 12, covered in blood and dirt and burns, barely able to stand. Some of them were crying. Some of them were just staring at nothing. "No," he said softly. "We're not angels. We're just human." The girl smiled. "Humans are better than angels." Park didn't know what to say to that, so he just picked her up and held her close and let the sunrise warm his face. They had won. The cost had been terrible, but they had won. And somewhere in his palace, Consortium leader Velith watched his empire crumble and finally understood what he had awakened when he touched humanity's children. It was too late for understanding. But he would have plenty of time to regret. The war ended not with a battle, but with a broadcast. Consortium leader Velith appeared on every screen across his territory. He looked old, broken. The confidence that had led him to attack human colonies was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of a man who had seen too much. "The Velari Consortium surrenders unconditionally to the human species," he said. His voice cracked. "We will release all prisoners. We will pay whatever reparations are demanded. We ask only for mercy." He paused. Behind him, through the window of his palace, Velari citizens could see their mighty fleet hanging powerless in orbit. Ghost Division had not destroyed a single ship. They had simply boarded the command vessels one by one and convinced the crews to stand down. No one asked how. No one wanted to know. "I thought we were strong," Velith continued. "I thought numbers and weapons were all that mattered. I was wrong. Humanity has shown us what true strength looks like. It is not the ability to destroy. It is the will to never give up, to never stop, to cross any distance, face any enemy, for the sake of their people." He lowered his head. "We should never have touched them." The broadcast ended. The war was over. On Earth, the survivors of Ghost Division came home. There were no parades, no celebrations, just quiet gratitude from the people who understood what they had done. 9 of the original 12 operators had survived. Master Sergeant Lee Tae-woo had taken 17 wounds over the course of the operation, 17 separate injuries, any one of which would have stopped a lesser soldier. He had refused medical evacuation until every civilian was safe. He spent 3 months in a hospital. When he finally walked out, the first thing he did was visit the memorial for the fallen. Bai Jinho, Shin Mirei, Kim Dae-ho, 3 names carved in stone, 3 empty places that would never be filled. Tae-woo stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Then he placed 3 small metal coins at the base of the memorial. Ghost Division coins, the same ones they had left on the pillows of terrified Valari officers. "Rest now," he whispered. "We've finished the mission." The Coalition Council formally apologized to Earth 3 weeks later. Ambassador Oh Soon-hee accepted the apology with cold courtesy. She did not forgive them. She did not forget their silence while her people died. But she gave them one final warning. "For 300 years, we tried to show you our better nature," she said, standing before the assembled delegates of 1,000 species. "We built, we healed, we explored. We hoped you would see us as partners, not threats." She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. "But you saw our kindness as weakness. You saw our restraint as inability. You stood by and watched while our children were murdered and enslaved, and you called it an internal matter." Her voice hardened. "We are still the children of a death world. We contain multitudes, love and fury, mercy and wrath, kindness and something darker. You chose to wake the part of us we keep caged." She looked around the room, meeting every eye. "Pray you never make that choice again." No one spoke. No one moved. The silence lasted until she walked out. Captain Park Do-hyun was offered a promotion to general. He declined. "I'm not a politician," he said. "I'm a soldier. My place is with my people." He returned to his post on the Mars station. His office was the same as before, small and plain. The only decoration was a photograph on his desk. 12 faces, smiling in the sunlight. Taken the day before they deployed. He looked at that photograph every morning. He would look at it every morning for the rest of his life. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Species that had once mocked humans now treated them with careful respect. Old alliances were rebuilt on foundations of mutual understanding instead of forgotten fear. One day, a young Velari historian came to Earth. She was writing a book about the war, trying to understand what had happened and why. She requested an interview with the legendary Captain Park. He agreed, though he didn't know why. Maybe he was getting old. Maybe he wanted someone to understand. They sat together in a small garden outside his retirement home. He was 70 now, his hair fully gray, his hands spotted with age. But his eyes were still sharp. "Why did you come for them?" the historian asked. "The odds were impossible. The cost was enormous. You lost 3 of your own people. Why risk so much for strangers?" Park was quiet for a long moment. He watched the wind move through the trees. He thought about the faces of the people he had saved, the faces of the people he had lost. Finally, he spoke. "In Korea, where I come from, we have a saying. Uriga namiga? It means, are we strangers to each other?" He smiled, soft and sad. "And the answer is always no. We are never strangers. Every human, anywhere in the galaxy, no matter how far away, they are family. They are ours." He looked at the historian with eyes that had seen too much death and too much love. "We do not abandon family, not for any reason, not against any odds. That is what it means to be human." The historian published her interview. It became required reading across the Coalition. Generations of aliens grew up learning about the Deathworlders who crossed the galaxy for their people. They learned about the terror, the violence, the darkness that humans could become. But they also learned about the love, the loyalty, the impossible, unreasonable, unstoppable devotion that humans felt for their own. The galaxy remembered its fear, but more importantly, it learned to understand. And somewhere, on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, humanity continued to do what it had always done. They built, they explored, they dreamed, and they watched over their children scattered across 10,000 worlds. With the fierce protective love of a species that had survived everything their universe could throw at them. The Deathworlders were awake, and they would never stop protecting their own.